Good day, I'm Elkana Ngwenya, and I'm presenting a paper entitled Using Three Definitions of Religious Beliefs to Profile Two Environmental Values of Religious Beings, RBs, and Non-Religious Beings, NRBs, in Australia, Japan, and the United States. I've co-authored the paper with Ngwenya Bunker. The outline of the presentation is as follows. I'll take you through the introduction and motivation, briefly touch on summary review, raise the key research questions that are pursued in this study, list the research objectives, point to the significance of the study, outline some methods, in particular where the data came from and the analysis thereof, then present some results, discuss them briefly, and conclude, and show, of course, a few acknowledgements and some references that can be followed. Introduction and motivation. The link between pro-environmental behavior and a whole set of other demographic variables is quite extensive. The literature also shows that there are certain schools of thought that suggest that environmental concern is rooted in religious beliefs. It is of interest, therefore, to examine the various sources of environmental ethic, using as many demographic variables as possible. In this regard, it is important, therefore, to find out whether religious beings, which we call RBs here, are in any way different from non-religious beings, NRBs, with respect to the environmental ethic. This is the key question that motivates this study. Literature review. Values motivate action, and our behaviors often involve trade-offs between competing values. Self-centered individuals, for example, are unlikely to act ecologically, and also different individuals with different religious philosophies will tend to have different relationships with nature. More so, in terms of other demographics, our childhood experiences may shape our values towards environmental conservation and hence influence our environmental ethic. Similarly, the nature of exploitation of resources and the environmental values thereof may underpin our environmental sentiment. It is therefore important for us to create an adequate understanding of factors that influence environmental action. In particular, look at the significance of our religious values. What then are the research questions for the study? Well, the first research question is, do religious being RBs hold environmental behaviors, EBs, that are different from those held by non-religious beings? So we're asking the question here whether do RBs hold EBs that are different from NRBs? The second question is there empirical evidence of a difference in EBs between RBs and NRBs in Australia, United States, and Japan? So we're checking here whether there's any empirical evidence, econometric, statistical, or any other form between the environmental behaviors of religious beings and non-religious beings. And we're going to use three countries in this case, data from Australia, United States, and Japan. So those are the two fundamental research questions that we're going to try and provide answers for, and therefore they set the scene for our objectives of the study. The research objectives are therefore to present three definitions of RBs in three countries, Australia, US, and Japan. Profile two environmental values. One of them is going to be an individual value, something that's personal to the individual, and the other one is going to be a collective value, something that they believe they should do as well as what other people should do, and as a group they will achieve more. The third objective is to conduct tests of independence. Here we're simply looking for chi-square tests to show whether environmental values are linked in any way or form to any given definition of a religious value. Last but certainly not least, we're also going to identify those factors that influence environmental values of religious beings and non-religious beings in Australia, United States, and Japan. Comparing environmental values of RBs and NRBs in three countries will contribute to an understanding of the relationship between environmental behavior and religious values. Such an understanding will enhance the analysis of EBs in different communities and country settings. These results of the analysis will inform environmental policy, which in turn will influence the focus of environmental advocacy. This study uses data from the Integrated World Values Survey 1981 to 2004. The World Values Survey is a global investigation of some socio-cultural and political variables across 97 societies and contains data covering almost 88% of the world population. Let us look at some data and the variables. Two groups of variables are included here. Definition of religious beings. We ask one question: do you believe in God, which is R1? Are you a religious person, which is R3? Do you belong to a religious denomination, which is R2? Then we look at environmental behaviors. The first environmental behavior is individual action. Are you willing to pay higher prices for environmental friendly goods? The second one is a collective action. Are you happy to see taxes being increased in order for us to pay for environmental pollution? And we ask those questions in 3 countries: Australia, Japan, and the United States. The results show 2 parts. First, the international evidence shows that whichever of the 3 definitions we're using, the proportion of individuals that are religious is quite high, ranging from 76.55% when using a self-definition of religious belief to 88.72% when you're using a simple definition of do you believe in God. In the case of Australia, Japan, and the United States, those 3 definitions give us somewhat different results in terms of the proportions of individuals that have answered yes to the 3 questions posed. As we can see that in particular the case of Japan, those values range from 30.73% to 50.86%. The results suggest that the definition of religious person does matter when it comes to this type of analysis. This table reports chi-square tests of independence, and we're looking at 2 variables here in the contingents table. First one is the definition belonging to a particular definition of religious being, and the other category is whether we increase taxes or buy or give income to protect the environment. Clearly, the results show that for these countries and across these definitions, there are no significant results, except of course for the case of Japan. We then follow the chi-square tests with logit functions, and these logit regressions mainly explain the likelihood that an individual undertakes or accepts or would like to have taxes increased for environmental protection, or they're willing to give a significant amount of money to protect the environment. In this case, we've selected only those variables that are significant and also the ones that may be focused more on the study. The results reported here are odds ratios, which shows here in the case of Japan, persons that attend church are 3 times more likely to be willing to increase taxes to protect the environment. Similarly, we'll look at individuals who believe that protecting the environment is a priority. They are 1.67 times more likely to accept an increase in taxes, and the same thing in the case of the UK, where the value is 2.935. Different definitions of religious values are certainly related to different environmental behaviors. We need to find out which ones are which and compare them across countries and across communities. So what may be core in terms of to religious beings and non-religious beings in terms of values need to be looked at if we are going to have every good effort at enhancing an environmental ethic. We also need to remember that environmental policy that's designed to assist or encourage proactive or pro-environment behavior may also benefit considerably if the researchers and the policymakers actually understand the determinants of the environmental behaviors of religious beings and non-religious beings. Also, it's important for us to remember that public opinion can influence environmental action in a significant way. So the study is hence significant in that regard. In conclusion, it is important to examine the connection between environmental values and religious beliefs or religious values, using several definitions instead of sticking to one definition.